Let's take a few minutes to get liberated from the chaos of working in your business. Scott Beebe, the host, the head coach, and the founder of the Business on Purpose platform. I appreciate you joining me. Just got out of a meeting with a group of guys, and as we were in there, and these are all small business owners, by the way, one of the small business owners really challenged everybody else to not be a jerk. And so we all kind of cocked our head a little bit, looked at him, and one of the guys said, "Hey, would you explain that a little bit more? What are you talking about?" And he started to tell a story about how in a particular situation with a team member, how his response was just being a jerk. And this is the business owner, the guy who was saying this. I was just being a jerk. And it actually made me think years ago when I had the privilege of being able to work for Pfizer. One of the core values of the company was a really interesting core value that piqued my interest the first time I had ever heard it. It was in quotes, and it said, "No, quote, jerk-like, end quote, behavior." No jerk-like behavior. And of course, for those of you who've ever been in a corporate or more bureaucratic leaning type of scenario in business, you realize that jerk-like behavior can be all over the place because the bureaucracy inherently kind of breeds it. And in a small business, a lot of times what can happen, because owners typically fall within a more active, driven personality, a lot of D's, I's on the disc profile, maybe even a DC, where there's a lot of task first, not very much people going on. What can end up happening in that situation is that the leader, out of frustration, out of fast thinking instead of slow thinking, out of reactionary mindset rather than progressive, thoughtful mindset, can just respond in a jerk-like behavior, can just be a jerk. And what it does, a couple things, you might think, well, it gets my point across. Yeah, it might today. But what it ends up doing long-term is it creates wounds. It ends up destroying a relationship. And you could say, well, it just makes them tougher, Yeah, can make it tougher, can actually, what it will do eventually is just make it calloused altogether. And so instead of saying that this is toughness, what we end up saying is it's callousness. And where there are calluses, there's really no feeling. And so do we want to create calloused team members, or do we want to create engaged team members? Yeah, a lot of the Gallup studies come back and they talk about the level of engagement and how it has plummeted. Engagement has plummeted in the workplace, and many of the actual surveys will come back and just say, hey, somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 70 some odd percent of employees are disengaged in their work. Disengaged in their work. My goodness, that is not what God set up. That's not what He gave us. He told us in Exodus 35 that God gave Bezalel the Spirit of God, giving him great wisdom, ability, and expertise in all sorts of crafts. So we've got this skill set, this craft. The intention was not to acquire the skill set of the craft and then go be miserable for the rest of our lives. The intention was to take that skill set, that craft, that capability, and live it out so that we can serve others with it. But if we're serving others with it under the umbrella of a jerk, it's really hard to serve with gratitude. If you want your team to have gratitude in how they serve, they're going to have to see that same level of service from me, from you. And so let's fight this idea of jerk-like behavior. Let's fight the idea that we've got to be tough and create all these cuts and wounds and everything, because what you're going to end up doing is creating a calloused team rather than creating an engaged